Welcome to Philly Coco Presents Side Project Spotlight, episode 66. This is a developer's journey into making cool stuff. I'm Kotaro.
I'm Steve.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are Philly Coco, a Philadelphia-based Coco Heads community focused on Apple development. That primarily, but not exclusively, means iOS, Mac, tvOS, watchOS, and visionOS development. Philly Coco's true desire is to take you higher on your own developer journey. Whew, all right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
2 weeks in a row. The perfect
Let's
introduction.
can that. Call it a day.
Just gotta clip that.
Just clip it.
Just put a
and
little.
just-
Use an AI to replace the
Yeah.
the number.
You know, if we could use AI to like make me slip up a few times.
We could. We have plenty of material to. It doesn't take much anymore to clone a voice. We could just do the entire podcast text to speech. We really wanted to. Just everybody,
Sure.
just submit your submit your dialogue.
But
We'll just have a chat. We'll just have the chat log become an audio podcast.
It just has to randomly like slip up somehow. Like that. That's like we have to have the prompt to be like, do this intro, but make sure you slip up somewhere in the middle.
Somewhere in the middle.
See what and see what kind of results we get from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do it in the
Oh,
style of do it in the Kotaro style of slip ups,
The Kotaro style.
which I don't know what that would be.
Oh my god!
Either I talk too
Eventually,
fast.
I mean, do the companies suck in like podcast transcripts and stuff now?
I think we
into
would have to feed it
into their
in
data sets?
just to make sure. That's like here's the list of all the podcasts.
No, I'm saying
Look at the intro.
I'm saying that the tools themselves may one day understand the concept of Kotaro style because they'll be trained on our podcast.
Right. Well, they'd have to know who Kotaro is in this
Well,
whole
they'll-
process, right?
Yeah. Well, we
They'll
just
have
said
to
it. We said the
understand.
Kotaro style. It's in the data set now. It's got to say it a few more times, more
Just a
100
few more
times,
times. It's
1,000
like,
times. Yeah, a million
million
times more, and then
A
it'll
million
pick it up.
times.
So
yeah.
it's been a busy week for
It has been.
Apple, and we're
Yeah.
about to enter a busy period. So we're like in this weird, like, what is no man's land? We're in this little gap between events, big events, and so today, I guess we were going to
WWDC
talk
is
about
coming up.
Yeah, WWDC, but we're not going to talk about WWDC because that's
No,
going to be the next
no.
episode. That's going to be a big dub episode
That's right.
where we
Little teaser.
predict the future and see
Sure.
how wrong we are a week later. But this week, though, we want to talk about the iPad event, obviously,
Mhm.
and then you have Kotaro, a new side project, going along in the vein of the name of the show.
Oh,
You have an
let's-
actual side project with games, a game side project to talk about.
Sure. Yeah. But first, the news.
The news. What is the
And,
news?
and the news as of May 12th, which is the time of this recording.
Oh no, the magic!
um,
The magic is gone now. People know. we
I'm
record
sorry.
these ahead of time.
Prior week ago of this particular recording, we had some new iPads that had been announced. And the one of focus that we care most about in this case, or at least the highlight, was the iPad Pro.
Oh yeah.
And aside from the kerfuffle about the commercial, I would like to talk more about the sort of the features of this particular iPad Pro and what that necessarily means for us. Obviously, one of the things that it's way thinner. At was it 5 point? I think the largest one is 5.1 millimeters, and the smaller one is 5.3 millimeters. One thing that I like about the fact that the large one is thinner and probably lighter, and lighter for the fact that like I have an iPad Pro, 13-inch or 12.9-inch, and then while I like it for its screen real estate, because I use it a lot to draw and paint and that kind of stuff with Procreate, it's very heavy.
Oh,
And when
yeah.
you add a cover to it, regardless if it's a Smartfolio or I forgot the one with the keyboard. Is that a smart keyboard?
I think I
one?
got rid of
Is
the
that what
Smartfolio. I
Magic
think.
keyboard.
Yeah, I think there's only a Magic Keyboard now.
All right, so the Magic keyboard is very heavy. like it adds a substantial amount of weight. You might as well just call it like a MacBook Air at that point in
Yeah, how
terms of
much-
weight.
Yeah.
So that's the one thing that people forget is like you rarely ever with a with a Mac with the cover itself, which is a pretty fairly wise investment, especially if you're doing digital art. It's just like, the thinness adds so much value just by itself.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think any of the concerns about the weight or the thinness, you're rarely going to carry it like naked in a sense. Whereas in my case, with my iPhone, I carry that pretty naked by
Wow.
itself. So
I still can't find the weight of the keyboard, but I don't know
Mhm.
if it's gotten any slimmer.
So I do have one with a keyboard, and it's just like, it's one thing if it's just like the cover, like the magic cover thing,
Yeah.
right? With like the thing that you just cover like this with like just without the keyboard. That's already heavy, but when you add the keyboard, if you switch it with the keyboard, that's even like heavier. That's
Yeah,
literally closer to like a MacBook Air, almost MacBook Pro type of weight.
I don't know what the weight of the new one is, but during the presentation, they did say, it makes it more like a MacBook experience with the new trackpad and the keyboard changes. So
And the other thing I will say
on it now.
Yeah, the other thing that I will say is like all the performance enhancements using with the M4 chip is going to be really, really nice for digital artists. I don't think people appreciate the fact that it is basically a Wacom tablet, a mobile Wacom tablet with all the benefits of the Wacom tablet. The only thing you might say a Wacom tablet's better at is like they have a larger size version of it that you can buy. But at the same price of a Wacom tablet 12-inch, at least as far as the time that I remember when the iPad Pro first came out, that this was a way better deal. Plus, you get the access to the iOS app ecosystem. The at the time, the high refresh rate of the pencil.
Oh yeah, the pencil change.
Yeah,
to me,
go ahead.
I was like, to me, the iPads, the thinness, I think is really cool. I think that a lot of people poo-poo the idea of weight reductions and thinness, but as you pointed out, it makes a difference depending on your like accessories and how you're using it in the field.
Because if you got to carry this thing, right?
Yeah.
Like imagine carrying a MacBook Pro in terms of the weight, and you got to do it with one arm.
And
right?
Exactly.
On a 13-inch. Like that's over time, that's hard.
And I think the thinness also helps with handling it. I mean, I haven't held one yet, but if it's thinner, I mean, especially the larger one, they had a example of using it with the new Final Cut app, which we can talk about if you want, with the multicam, which is cool. If I'm holding that thing in the field, assuming I'm not putting it in a case, I'd like it to be thinner. And even if you are putting it in a case, just having less material to cover means it's lighter and easier to handle. So I think that's cool. I think, although mostly the making it thinner thing is probably more about just saying you could do it. I mean, like they didn't have to. They could have kept it the same thickness but I think it was a lot of it about weight. I don't know. Could you have kept it the same thickness without and get the weight down?
Maybe. I guess it depends on the materials you're using, right?
But it's like a flex, and it's the fact that the screen is thinner too.
Yeah,
I mean, this is
right.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking that too.
Don't do physical.
Don't do it. They did say it's the same strength as the old one. I mean, I guess we'll see. There'll be a bunch of YouTube videos with people buying $1,000 iPads just to bend them real hard on camera, which is just that's cringy to me.
I mean, what's probably even more cringy is the fact that they'll probably return it. And
you can't return it once you do that. You bend it in half.
Well,
would you? I accidentally it got bent in my bag. Is that what they're going to say?
Something
like that.
You know how that is.
I was going to say that the other thing about the iPad is that the iPad Pros are where Apple showcases the premier top shelf technology they're working on for the most part. I mean, this year especially with the new chip we can talk about, but the screen I thought was probably the most exciting thing. The iPad besides the processor, because it's the first tandem OLED that's in a consumer product, which is not an Apple term. That's apparently an industry term. There's like, it's just they're called tandem OLEDs, and the fact that you can get like 1,000 nits or 1,600 nits at peak out of an OLED on a screen that size is amazing.
I feel like I'm pretty at this point. I'm like, it's hard for me to have an attention span of a child. but not that's hard. Like, I feel like I have one now of a child, but like,
Yeah.
is that am I understanding about this? It's like two OLED displays stacked on top of each other that allows for a higher level of nits to go through, or how is that? How they're basically stacked, right? Two OLEDs stacked together and coordinated in a way so that it increases the brightness and the blackness of it, or the so the
I don't think it needs any more blackness. I think it's
more
just
light
that
through.
you get more light
Right.
because there's
Okay.
Yeah, I
two
think
displays on top of each other.
I think the Snazzy Labs did a video about this, which was really interesting, and I'll have to put that in the show notes. But they were that video was talking about, I think it's Quinn Nelson, is that his name? Was talking about the some of the technical stuff in here. It was pretty interesting. But yeah, there's some techniques that, like, there's he was talking about, no one's sure how exactly Apple has overcome certain technical issues you have when you do this, because the light has to now go through more material and it can reflect around, but whatever they did, it seems to work from the people who've seen it in demo, and it's very impressive. And it lets you have OLED with the benefits of OLED, especially that pure black and that HDR ability, with the high nit rating that you're used to on something like this. I think this is this like a first of its kind, at least in a consumer product, a screen? Yeah.
That's what I heard, but
yeah. Well, neither am I. But I'll put a link in the.
How much is that? The base model?
How much is it? Well, let's click order now on the webpage. Let's see. The base 11-inch starts at $1,000 now. It went up.
That's really good. That is actually, I thought they would have increased the price, but yeah, that's really good.
I mean, for
13
the
inches is so like that's 1,000.
13 inches is $1,300 though to start with.
That's fine. Which,
well, people are complaining about it. I mean, I think that the screens. I mean, imagine if you can get this kind of screen on like an XDR display, or something, or a laptop eventually.
The people complaining about it don't use the iPad. Like, they stick to the iPad.
Yeah, you don't need the Pro. You don't need
the Pro. Like, the Pro
Air
is meant for pros.
The Air is practically the last generation iPad Pro now. I mean, it has an M2. It has nice. It doesn't have the high refresh display, but it has it doesn't have and Face ID, but it has most of the other stuff.
How much is the base Air? We're doing this live.
We're doing this live, people. I'm doing it live. The iPad Air price. So many ads. The Apple's stupid pages.
That's fine. Oh,
$599 is the start set.
Yeah,
for 11-inch, and $800 for the 13-inch, which is the model I would get, because I want a big screen iPad, and it's the first time you can get a. Because I have the Mini, which is the greatest iPad ever, and it wasn't updated. But besides the greatest iPad, I want a big one.
If I had to say, if there was any fundamental flaw with that version of the iPad, it was the weight. Ironically enough.
Oh yeah, this is probably heavy. And there's no Face ID on it either, which I don't know why. Maybe a cost issue. But the Air, otherwise, is practically like, what was it, like 90% of what a Pro was until now?
Sure.
I mean, that's how I'm marketing. So people are confused about the iPad lineup, and I'm not really sure why. Like, there's the Mini, which is the greatest iPad ever, and you should just buy that one as soon as they update it anyway. And then there's like,
I feel like the Mini is going the way of the like the iPhone Mini.
I know.
Like, not enough people buy it.
I know. I don't know. I'm still holding out hope. I'm still hoping they update it. It doesn't even have an M chip in it.
Maybe they can't. Yeah, they probably can't figure out how to figure out the thermals for putting an M chip, and then then is it really? And
then they have the iPad Air, which is probably what most people should get. Which again, they said is like the trickle down of the pros. It could do. It's to do everything iPad for anybody except for the highest end pro people. And then you have the regular iPad, which is just there if you are on a strict budget or you're like education. Because like a lot of people say, "Oh, get this iPad." Like if you needed to get a cheap iPad, you get this one. But
this is the one you give. This is the one you give to your kids.
Yeah, it's the one you give to your kids. I mean,
if you want to spoil them, like
any perfect. iPad to a kid is spoiling. But
that's fair.
I mean, these. Oh, also the original iPad still starts at 64 gigs. I didn't realize that. So this is not the one to get for like real work. I would say, but it's fine. It would work fine for most. Wait,
what's the processor
people.
for this one?
It's a good question. I don't know.
Because I mean,
tell you anywhere.
One of the things that I think is funny, that I've noticed, like
it's an A14,
almost like a Bionic. Yeah. It's basically like if you have, it's like a way to like distract your child.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, iPads.
I feel like I see parents all the time when I'm at at the park or at like at a restaurant, and the kids got this little carrying case. They're carrying their iPad.
Oh yeah,
like
yeah.
The security blanket.
Exactly. The iPad. So the iPad lineup, I think, is much improved now. Putting aside the Mini, which I hope they update, the iPad is really there for price, I think.
Sure.
And if you could afford beyond that, the Air is just better in every way. And then very few people are going to buy a Pro. Like I think the Pro is probably a low volume comparatively, and it's there for people you need a Pro. It's like the MacBook lineup now. It's like, do you get a Pro MacBook? I mean, you don't. If you need like a Max chip or something, if you need that, and if you don't, you're just going to get like a MacBook Air. So
like you're not going to do web development on it. You're not going to do Xcode. You're not going to use it for like. Some people do, but you're not going to do like, you're not going to do. You can do web development. Let me rephrase that. You can do
web development,
like basic text editing stuff. That
you can do that. You can also like use a terminal app and then log into whatever system and do all the same stuff you could on your laptop. Although that's you don't want to go.
Right, but I think like there are, so anything on the go in terms of like. If you're sketching, you want to do some animation sequence, you want to review storyboards, or you want to review your film, the videos that you were doing, and you edit and you can slice and dice it and cut it up and have a nice draft while you're on the train. If you want to do digital art on the go in a cafe, if you want to do live music, or if you want to DJ, or if you want to do all sorts of these sort of very creative pro workflows that can be a little more mobile in a lot of ways, especially if you're on the go a lot. These are fantastic. This is like the Pro is a fantastic tool.
Yeah.
No.
So, Kotaro, are you getting one?
Which year is your iPad Pro?
Oh, it's really old. It's like an M1. I think it's an M1 chip, so it's actually quite old comparatively.
Wow. I mean, it still gets updates. So I'm an M1 laptop right here. It doesn't feel old.
It doesn't feel old at all.
I mean, I have an M1 Max, but it doesn't feel old. Like the M1 chips do not feel old or slow to me. So I don't know. The Apple Pencil got updated too. So I think people like we are programmers most of the time. That's our primary thing.
That's our bread and butter.
So it's like we always think, oh, you can't use Xcode, you can't do this, can't do that, but the people who use iPads for their work are not programmers per se. They're mostly, as you said, more artistic people that want a big screen, maybe in the field, or a big screen for with a specialized software interface for something. You know, whether controls like it's. I think we've talked about it before, and I think everybody probably has seen this in the field. People use iPads to control other hardware. It's a really good for that. So you see that at music venues. Everybody has iPads now to set up the sound, maybe do lighting, depends on the software you're using. So any kind of like live production environment, iPads are great for that. Sure. Obviously, they're good for any kind of artistic drawing style of work. And that brings you to the new pencil, which is a big upgrade actually. When you start looking at the features, the what's called Pencil Pro now, because it looks it wasn't look exactly the same as the other pencil, so they had to put some other name on the side of it to identify it. But Pencil Pro is I don't know, Kotaro, I'm hoping you have some thoughts about this, because the new what we call it,
familiar with the barrel roll mechanic. I haven't had a real good chance to like understand what that exactly means, aside from the fact that you can.
Did you see it?
Kind of it's good for like brush strokes in terms of like controlling that a little bit better versus like the tilt, like you relying on just the pure tilt mechanic of it, as well as like the squeeze gesture where you squeeze the pen and it'll open up like context menus fundamentally, or allows for that opportunity for developers to build context menus or pie menus that you can access control features of the app a little bit easier without having to like tap on another button somewhere else. So it's really good for that kind of like stay in the workflow mentality.
So do you know how this compares to a like top shelf Wacom, whatever you pronounce it, tablet and pen setup, like gesture wise and such?
So I can't speak to the modern Wacom tablet pens these days. One of the things that obviously it looks very reminiscent of a regular pencil versus like a Wacom tablet has a much more like thicker frame cylinder. It kind of has a much more curvature shape to make it feel a little more comfortable, and like thicker at the end of the tip that gives it a little more feel of a weight. It fundamentally doesn't feel that much different in terms of like weight, but it just has a definite like opinion about how the curve should feel, so it's like optimal for you in terms of comfort. Whereas I think pencil, over a bit of time, it just feels like a pencil in terms of like, oh, this feels a little bit uncomfortable like after a period of time.
Yeah,
but they make cases basically that'll turn it into.
But I mean,
you can use that. Most people don't.
In terms of like the squeeze gesture, the barrel roll, the sensitivity, like the buttons that might be on the thing, like how comparable are they? And do you the similar type of interfaces?
Does the pencil have any buttons?
Yeah.
It's like the
pencil has like it would recognize like double tap. Well, pencil
the current
2,
one.
I should say.
The pencil 2
the current one has like a double tap feature that will allow you to add another. I think of it like your action button, the new action button on the iPhone, where you can use it for like you can customize it to do anything you really want depending on the app. Like that could be your erase, or that could be your toggle between color palettes. You can.
Right, because some of these drawing tablets, they usually have like 2 or 3 actual buttons.
So I think, I think what they're trying to go with this is you squeeze to bring up your menu palette, and then because of, I don't know if it's related to the, what do they call it, the little hover, but then you can like select the thing. I don't know how the select works, if it has anything to do with the hover, but the ability to just select from a panel real quick underneath your pen tip is probably what they're going for as a way around having lots of buttons. For one thing, Apple's not going to do that, and also it's more flexible as an interface because you can see it.
Yeah,
but I don't know if it's better from a workflow perspective though.
It's just more like a way so that you don't have to like let's say for example you wanna I don't know, undo something, but you don't necessarily want to have to like do a gesture or like go to the undo button. You can just press and hold, squeeze and hold, and then it'll open up the thing where you can like, then you can maybe even use the barrel roll to actually like dial in an undo. Like you want to undo like 4 steps back or something like that.
The barrel roll.
You could do something.
The barrel roll, that's a thing on like Wacom tablets, right? That kind of thing. Like you can adjust the.
I'm not familiar anymore with like Wacom tablet, the new hardware.
I assume that Apple is not like the pioneer in pen interface UI necessarily.
No.
But they are adopting.
It.
They're like adopting these techniques, I'm guessing, and fitting them into a consumer product. And what I thought was cool about the demo from the barrel roll thing, it sounds like such a insignificant change, but when I watched the demo of an artist actually using it, I was very impressed, because when just twisting it means you could change the angle of the brush, and the brush strokes are very different. Like if you ever use a physical brush, you'd know this, and so just changing the angle meant you could very quickly work on your drawing and not have to, I guess, switch brush heads or something, or go through some other interface. It would be slower.
What I've understood, at least from again the same Mac Weekly podcast, is one of the flaws in the current pencil mechanic is that because you can't have that control, you're almost like, artists have always suggested to each other, well, just keep doing the stroke until you get the stroke you want. So basically stroke, you don't like it, undo, which is what I've done in the past. Stroke again, if it works, great, keep it. If not, undo and do it again. So you might do it like a few times before you're happy with the actual stroke that you like, and then you continue on. But like now you don't have to do that as much because you can like dial in like, okay, this is kind of the angle I want. Now do it, and you can get the results like that will not feel like it's like pseudo auto generated in a weird way. Like it's less of a guessing game.
Yeah. So if you want to get an Apple Pencil for your iPad, you have to look at the Matrix now, though. Figure it out.
Yes.
Which I know we all make fun of it.
But it's part of the course of a Tim Cook Apple these days. So you got gazillions of options.
I thought about it in this other way though, that Apple supports the technology for a long time. So they're willing to make changes like this pencil. They needed to make incompatible changes to it, I think, because of the changing of the charging, magnetic charging on the new iPads, because they moved the camera there, and so they had to change things. That was like the problem with the last generation iPads and the pencils, that you couldn't put the camera there because it would be in the way of the charging hardware there. So they had to do that, and they're willing to do that and say, okay, we're gonna have to make a new pencil. Basically, looks the same. It has and it's not going to be compatible with the older iPads. But they also keep around the stuff from the older technology. So they'll move forward on new technology, but keep supporting the old one. So yeah, it's a little weird. You have to go look at it, make sure you get the right pencil, but it's not that hard. It's like the newest ones only work with the Pro, I think, and then you get the older ones. They'll have a Pro, the regular pencil too, and then if you have like a really old one that doesn't have a magnetic thing on it, then you have to get like the USB-C one or the Lightning one. I mean, it's not that hard, but I appreciate that Apple supports this stuff. And especially if you're buying something like an iPad, it's pretty expensive. Even the cheaper iPads for a lot of people.
One of the things that I don't necessarily agree with, at least from a pro perspective, is like creative pros are willing to put the money in for the tools that they feel is, because they make it up in the work that they get. So from that standpoint, like they look at this and like, oh, I'll get this thing will pay for itself with like one or two contracts. Like in and of itself, you're thinking of it as an investment in your workflow. So if this helps improve your workflow by like, a couple hours, if not a couple of days, then, it pays for itself. So creative pros will pay for tools because of that fact. So this to me feels like a pretty good deal.
Yeah. Oh, and I'm looking at the one of the pencil charts here, and it does say that double tap exists on both the Pro and the Pencil second generation. So you basically have all the same features plus the new stuff: barrel roll, squeeze, haptic feedback. Find My is probably the greatest thing ever for the. Why wasn't it in there? I mean, you need that. The thing does not. I love the fact that you can put the pencil on like my Mini. You can attach it or something, but it pops off all the time. You put it in a bag or something like that.
One funny thing they said that it's very much probably not like a UW. I don't think there's a UWB installed in that, which is an ultra wideband.
Right, so you can't use you can't like wayfind it. You can't like have a little arrow point to it.
But you could probably likely at least have approximate, like, okay, within this approximation in this area, it's here and with relatively close proximity.
Yeah, maybe you can make
it where it would be. Yeah, so at least you can be sure it's in the house somewhere. You might not necessarily know which floor or in what direction, but somewhere in the house it's there.
I don't know what floor it's on. Somewhere. Yeah, so
if I remember how Bluetooth works.
Yeah. And so then we also have the screen, the size changes, the pencil, and then of course the other really big news was the M4 processor. It's exclusive currently to the iPad Pro. M3 just came out like 6 months ago or something like that.
Yeah.
And
again, goes back to what we talked about. I guess part of the reason is because they're like, well, why would they put that on the iPad Pro first instead of like the laptops? And we were saying like the yields probably are so low. Maybe this is a safe bet to put in.
I mean, they're binning them. as is. Like like you have to go up to what, the 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte models to get the full binned, the full non-binned chip, like all the cores.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I think so. I mean, yeah, that makes sense. You're trying out here it's a new 3 nanometer process, whatever that means anymore. And
it's very small process,
very small,
very small transistor.
Well, I mean, I don't know what it means. I don't really know what they're measuring. What's the 3 nanometers of what anymore? So there's that, and I get the feeling that I don't know that this processor is probably not super like a huge leap in performance from the M3 in most things, except that it does have better performance per watt. I think that's what they were advertising, and the neural engine is supposed to be big improved, right? And it has, and they also needed it for the screen. That was the other thing. They needed custom silicon for the Tandem OLED, so they needed it for that. But I think they didn't really. They talked a lot about. They talked about like AI, but they didn't really tell you what. I don't really think they went into detail about the neural engine, right?
Right, but they kind of like glossed over this idea about a whole display engine.
Yeah.
And I don't know that like of all the demos that they did, I never remember seeing like that much of like a very big chunky looking like display engine part of that conversation. I was like, yeah, we got this whole display engine in our SoC. Like, look how cool that is, right? So like a quarter of like that whole. If you're looking at that diagram, if you go back up for a little bit, that chip there, right? Like they have a whole section is dedicated. I don't know.
Well, there's always a display driver on the chips, but like, this is a new one because it's basically like has 2 screens and has to power it once, right? Which is amazing, and a lot more efficiency cores. I think the GPU is basically the same, if not exactly the same, and I think the neural engine got upgraded.
I think they had 16 dedicated neural engine chips.
They increased the memory bandwidth too, which will make a difference, and they're probably running the thing faster, the clock speed faster, to get more performance.
So yeah, it's going to be great for 3D sculpting, great for games. Not that. I feel like
Oh right.
They did.
They took away one of the cameras,
which
nobody's going to care. Which camera did they take away?
The wide angle.
I don't care.
Nobody's going to care.
No, and the thing they demoed, they're like, they made a point to demo using the camera to scan a document, and they said, look at this new flash thing we have, which I actually thought was cool, and I hope that that's a software thing at all. I have that actual problem with my phone trying to scan things and getting the light and not having a stupid shadow on the thing. So I was like, Apple actually, they're really covering up the fact that they removed the camera, and they're trying to make it more palatable to people that might care. But also, I'm like, that's actually a legitimately useful feature if you ever have to scan a lot of papers with your phone or your iPad. I was like, yeah, people, that's what they use the camera for on an iPad. I've never in my life thought I want to take a picture or a movie with an iPad.
One of the funnier like elements of Discord on social media was like, it was such a it was like, yeah, they took the camera out.
Nobody cares. Nobody cares about that. They care about props being crushed and stuff, but not this.
That's fine.
I don't know if this is new, but is it new that you can run a video off of a drive? Could you do that
off of a drive?
Off a hard drive with this? Was that?
Well, that was something
they did. It was on the newest iPhone. It was like, was that not a thing you could do with USB-C iPad Pro before now? Because that's actually a huge deal. One of the issues with the iPad Pro or the iPads in general is that you could do video editing, but you can't do video editing because you need a huge amount of space, and you'd have to import all of your stuff. Same thing with video with photos. I don't know but to a lesser degree, I don't know if photos still need to be imported. But it was like very brief, and I think they were showing a hard drive off, connected, and then I think it was in Final Cut. I was like, oh wow, if that's new, that's actually a big deal too, because it makes it much more viable as a video editor. Because I just didn't understand that they had this Final Cut app, and it's like you can't do much with it because you would need you don't have enough space to download clips. Like they're like, yeah, you could do 4K ProRes. I'm like, do you know how big those files are? You can't. Like most people aren't buying like even a terabyte wasn't really that much. Right. Like I have a terabyte of storage on my laptop, and even doing like basic 4K stuff, I'll like run out of space if I try to put them on there, clips on there for small videos.
I was about to say, it's like,
yeah.
I assume you got a stack of those.
No, I mean that's the built-in one because that's to get the best performance. But it's like you basically you almost always edit video off of an external drive because like an SSD, because it's the only way to get enough capacity. So if you're using like a laptop or obviously an iPad. So I thought that was cool too. If that's new, I'm just not 100% sure if that's new. And I want to know if you can do it with photos, because that's more my deal. If I could take, because what I would like to be able to do, and what I've done before on like my iPhone and like I guess I could do it on the Mini. You get an adapter for like your SD card or whatever card you have, and then especially now they're USB, and then you could import them onto the device and edit them. But what I would love to be able to do is maybe edit them directly on the hard drive, like import to another, like import them and leave them on the drive, or or make a copy on the drive and not have them go all the way to the internal drive. I'm not sure if that can happen, but iPads are more useful now for creative stuff, video, photos, drawing, artistic stuff, music creation than ever before. They're just not very good for programming. That's like the thing we do. That's why
not yet. That'll be that's
we'll
on
see.
our
Maybe
WWDC bingo card. We're gonna, because here's the thing, right? Just as like a preview of what could be, if you ever try to use playgrounds on the iPad, if you ever like program like a very basic playground thing, that code completion is phenomenal. Way better
so fast
than what's on X. It's so fast. It's so good. And I'm like, I can't understand. I mean, I kind of understand why, but I can't believe we can't get that on Xcode. Like,
the whole
Playground is phenomenal code completion. Like, it's amazing.
Just faster experience. Playground's on an iOS device or an iPad OS device. It's just a faster development experience than I've ever gotten on Xcode. It's more fluid.
In fact, I probably should just do it as like an exercise of just enjoy. Like, if I want to enjoy Swift,
yeah, because it's like it's constant. Even if you try Playground on your Mac, it's still slow. Often, it still can be slow. Depending on what you're doing. So I always found that using it on like on an iPad or on your phone or whatever is. I think you can do it on your phone, right?
I will say it will stop working occasionally, which means you have to sort of reboot. Like kill your app and start it open again if you need to like reset the thing, but that was its only flaw.
Yeah, I know. We keep saying every year, maybe, and we'll talk about a dub episode, but Xcode you could do a form of Xcode. There's nothing really stopping them technically. It's just a matter of software implementation. I mean, technically, which is of course not a simple matter, but
technically you can actually build an app, like a full-on
app. You can actually submit it to the App Store.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah,
you can. It's just you're just limited. But what I imagine a more full-fledged Xcode would be on an iPad would be, it would still be restricted. Like it would be Swift only, Swift UI only. It wouldn't be any legacy stuff. That's the main limitation.
And I don't know if you can get exposure, like if the framework is not Swift UI friendly. Like you need to go dive into UI kit. Like
I think
they allow for like UI view representable kind of stuff.
No, that's what I mean. So I think that any kind of Xcode will still be something that's more restrictive. That it'll be like an upgraded Playgrounds, not a like a full fledged Xcode that people keep saying that, or people want Mac OS on the iPad. I'm just like, buy a Mac then. I mean, like I don't. Where am I gonna go into all that? We talked about it before, but it's like. Apple doesn't want to do that, at least right now. So it's don't bet, don't hold your breath.
I get it. I think it's just understanding, like, particularly like creative professionals will understand, like, okay, I can use this particular tool for this part of the workflow, and then once I'm done, I migrate it to this other tool that's better suited for another part of the workflow.
They mentioned that. When we were talking about Final Cut and Logic. They did mention very briefly, like, it's good for if you want to do it all on the iPad, or if you want to have it as part of a workflow with your Mac, you want to go back and forth. They're trying to make it better. And running off a hard drive is a huge deal. Like that was a big problem last year that made the Final Cut kind of useless for a lot of professionals. Because you're like, I have to do my workflow, at least some of it on my Mac, and it's like I can't get to import it on the iPad. What is this? So being able to do it off a hard drive means I don't know. I have to see what the reviews are like, maybe if you can more easily move between Mac and iPad, there are other limitations to it, like plugins and stuff. So it'd be interesting to see if that's greatly improved, because there are definitely a lot of people today, a lot of creatives who like using iPads for video and also for audio editing. They didn't really talk about Logic, but I think Ferrite's the other big one. Is that what it's called? I think that app for a lot of people do their podcasts all on an iPad. At least there's some contingent of people I've seen.
Sure,
I've seen the discussions about it, and it's could
you
be a nice
imagine,
experience to editing.
I wonder how multicam would work in that regard, right? Because like you can set up a multicam rig in that sense, right? And then do a live like recording.
The multicam thing was recording them all. So I was trying to understand this. So you had the camera apps on the phones, and then you were on Final Cut. Was it just the live feeds being recorded onto your project? And so could you do live editing that way, like a multicam live, like literal live? Because like multicam editing is a thing in Final Cut where you have the different angles, and you can use like a keyboard shortcut, just switch between them real quick, so you can kind of do a live edit while you just play the video and you just switch between them. And I'm like, is it doing live cuts while you're looking at the multicam? I wasn't 100% sure.
That's a good question.
I've used other tools to do this kind of thing for live streaming, and I'm wondering if you will be able to do the same thing with an iPad like now. Like I don't know. I mean, can we use this technology? Or maybe you already could, but can we do this with live streaming? That would be my question too, because I have done that before, where I had iPhones with I think it was NDI is the protocol or something. There's a network protocol for like sending like video, and then you can lots of software for live streaming software can capture it, and then you just have like it just comes in as a camera feed on your network. And so I did that, especially during the pandemic when we were all like, we couldn't go inside places. So the other thing I do with we used to have events outside. And so I remember once I set up these cameras and I had feeds going. So, and it was cool. And that's what it reminded me of when I saw that. But the multicam is neat. It's and if it helps you edit live, especially like do any cuts, that would really help cut down workflow. Cut your time to edit down, because editing videos is super time consuming. I can't.
Very time consuming.
It's like it's not something I totally enjoy, really.
I mean, it does require like a lot of tinkering and refinement, and you spend a lot of time just getting the right cut, right?
Yeah,
just
I mean,
I just got one more frame,
and you can't get around that. You can't get around that part. But if you can make the upfront work less when you're ingesting it, when you're doing the rough cut, like there's tools now in Premiere. Yeah, there's like tools now, like these AI tools that do like rough cuts of things for you automatically. Sure. Like that kind of thing could be a huge, like could literally save you hours of time. Because I mean, I've done the multicam cut thing where you switch between the cams, you just do a rough cut while watching the video, but then you got to watch the whole video. So even at higher speed, you still got to watch it. It just takes a while.
Can't let the AI take that role from you. One thing that I will find interesting, because all this iPad Pro and all these new iPads, especially with the ones with the M4 chip, I kept thinking to myself, like, they sprinkled AI in all the stuff, but I kept thinking, it's like there's an implication there that this thing is designed, this M4 chip product is designed for whatever is coming down the pike on WWDC, like all this yada yada talk about AI. One of the things that made it very clear to me was like, this is a half-baked product in a way, because the real soul of the OS is not out yet in terms of like what this hardware is really meant to take advantage of.
Yeah.
So
as usual with iPads, it's the software is always lacking.
Well, yeah, I mean, part of it is like, somewhat. Yes, but that is on Apple to make the operating system feel a little more fluid. in terms of like workflows, in terms of like, okay, we get a lot of them, but then they're all kind of like a jumbled mess, almost like how we handle like spaces and window management. I feel like that's like the internal battle in general of operating systems. But then on top of that, there is the idea like, okay, well, what can AI really do in a localized manner to take advantage of like all these extra little mini features, and what kind of tools we're going to be given as app developers.
As we talked about a universal UI episode, right? And since then, like that is where I think the LLM stuff will really shine. It's not like telling a computer some vague prompt and having it generate stuff for you, which can be somewhat useful. Like Adobe has done some good stuff with that, where especially if you give it a starting image and then you can give it a prompt. But it's like I want to give commands to my system to do stuff, or to implement workflows, for instance, or to trigger things. And I want to be able to tell the computer sometimes something that's a little hard to explain with like button taps or whatever, or be more tedious. And I just want to say like, here, or I want to use it to create a shortcut or something. Like imagine just something like that. Like you go into shortcuts, you want to create a shortcut, but it's like, how shortcuts UI is. You go in there and you have to think about like, where are these triggers? Whereas maybe you can just be like, ask it like, how do I make a shortcut to do X, Y, and Z? Take a photo and transform it into a JPEG at this for a thumbnail or something, and then it can maybe, like this is probably not what's kind of WWC, but like maybe do some of that for you, or give you, or at least query the the database and give you an idea. That's where it's useful, like I think, as an interface element, more than anything else. But we'll see.
Yeah, agree.
I've heard rumors. I heard rumors like you'll be able to like ask photos to like do stuff,
Right. We could. I think that's the one thing I was joking. In my mind was like, oh, we should probably put AI as like the centerpiece of our bingo card.
Oh, probably.
Because that's what's going to be talked about.
Yeah, the free space is going to be AI.
AI, yeah.
Well, how many?
Well,
how
we
many
could
times?
have bingo.
We
could have squares that are like AI times 5 or whatever. If they say 5 times, you can do it.
We should do over unders.
Yes. Actually, that's not a bad idea. Just to make it more fun, like because we're gonna make a. If you didn't know, if you're listening, like we have a WWDC bingo. We watch the keynote like on we kind of like. We can't really watch it together because of copyright stuff, I guess. But we'll get on to the Slack and we'll watch it together, and we all have bingo cards that I generate. Right. And then if you and it's kind of like a drinking game without the alcohol. It's a bingo game.
Yes. Yeah.
Like whenever Tim Cook says "Good morning,"
Papa Jolly Rancher.
Yeah, Papa Jolly Rancher. Yeah, we have stuff on there like "Good morning." He says "Good morning." You got to stop. Yeah. And then you get stuff like we make predictions about technology, like Swift data. That was on our cards for years until finally we got a Swift-based core data replacement. So that was cool. That was nice. We can remove that one from the list.
All right. So we're getting close to time.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about your Godot.
Yes. So one thing that I do want, we can hold off a little bit on like the details of this, but one thing that I do want to say is right now I've sort of committed on this idea of building a game, like a very small one, just to sort of get a sense of Godot in general. I've been taking up a lot of tutorials on online just to sort of see and just to sort of play around with this game engine called Godot, which is free.
I really want to make some kind of waiting for Godot joke. I just haven't been able to figure out how exactly to tee it up, but I'll get there.
Well, I'm not familiar with the actual
was it the play
material for that, so I'd have to actually watch the play to understand the context of the joke. But the one thing that I do want to do, because Godot is such an interesting game engine, it reminds me a lot of Unity in the early days prior to when they sort of built a cross-platform development environment for it. But at that time, it was, you looked at some of the game examples in Unity, looked very similar to the style and sort of the type of games that were built now with Godot. It's very like nascent in terms of like what you can, what type of, I don't think there was a lot of game developers working on that platform at the time that really like stress tested to its furthest extent. But it gets better. It's gotten a lot better since the early days. So I kind of want to, kind of want to ride that wave a little bit and see if there's potential there. It's again, it's open source, so there's really no downside in terms of like trying to develop for it. It's already built momentum. A very popular YouTuber, Breaky, has expressed his desire. He was originally a big into Unity until the whole Unity kerfuffle, and then he kind of left the scene, and then he came back recently to say he's going to start doing tutorials around Godot. Not because he does sense the same type of thing where there's a momentum there that's hard to express. But
that's what happens when you piss off a significant amount of your user base.
The thing about it is like Unity is a publicly traded company now, and with that comes different priorities. So they have to grow in different ways, and so game engine development is not necessarily like a super growth kind of product, because you kind of have to keep churning and getting subscriptions and that kind of stuff. So they've upped the price for subscriptions to be, it used to be like $250. You pay $250 a year, you can get decent access to like resources within Unity, but now they bumped it up to like practically $2,000 a year. For indie developers, that's like a no-go. So they have to switch alternatively between, it's kind of like a no-choice situation.
And Godot is definitely, it seems like it's more geared towards hobbyists.
Yeah,
there's no commercial support that they don't offer, I don't think, right? And
well, they do offer it, but for like generally like if you're targeting like PlayStation, Nintendo Switch, that kind of stuff, they will provide consulting support.
They will, because doesn't say that in here, but I guess somewhere.
That's the Godot Foundation. They have a subsidiary called WC4 or something like that. Where they do consulting work, and that's kind of how they make extra money.
Right, yeah.
That are outside of the nonprofit.
And like, in capability wise, how does Godot, like, how would Godot compare like to where Unity is now? Is it like the equivalent of Unity from like, year 3 of Unity? Or is it like how far away from Unity today is Godot? Very far, little far.
Godot is basically like like when Unity was starting out, probably closer to like when it was Mac only.
Oh, okay.
In terms of like
that was a while ago.
That was a long while. Now, in terms of like, obviously it's a little more.
It's not exactly. It's not
exactly the right analogy, but it feels that way. So originally it was meant for 2D games, kind of similar like Coco's 2D in that sense. But now they have a fairly capable 3D engine, for which you can choose between 2D, 3D. You can go that route. They have pretty robust 2D game support. So all you care about is making a 2D game. In this case, which is all I care to do, which is like basically a pixel fighting game that I'm just sort of testing out the mechanics. That it's more than enough for what I need it for. But if you're looking for something with robust asset support, tooling, third party asset store that will provide sort of like third party tooling, that kind of stuff, it doesn't have anything nearly as robust or as diverse as Unity asset store, or even Unreal asset store for that matter. Unreal is the game engine that you probably would use if you're targeting much more of a AAA style game. Like I would never use it for something like a card battle game or something like a Pokemon style game or a Game Boy style game. That would be overkill in my mind, especially for the license that you would pay for over time with that. So I think it's kind of interesting at this point if we were to like line them up against Godot, Unity, and Unreal. Unity, Godot is kind of like a hobbyist, small indie style game as of right now. If you're starting out, and it's actually a really good tool for beginners. Unity is closer to like middle of the road. So if you're doing a mobile game that can scale both ways, so if you're doing a mobile game or something lightweight 2D, it's a really good engine for that. With the long-term intention of like and it's probably the most flexible in terms of where you can target your platform. So you can go from PC, Mac, mobile. It supports all the platforms, consoles. Wherever you need to do AR, VR, that kind of stuff. It's kind of the tool of choice if you want a much more flexible way to get your game in as many places as possible. But if you're going for something like really, really high fidelity, pushing the boundaries from a performance, from a graphics fidelity and audio and all that stuff, you would go with Unreal because the toolings are relatively easier to work with. You get a lot of stuff out of the box, multiplayer, visual effects, easier, I guess, if you're into node-based programming. Their blueprint of visual scripting, their blueprint framework is considered quite nice, although to me it just looks like a lot of spaghetti. In a binary tree format. So
binary spaghetti.
Name of the show. It just depends on where you're coming from. I mean, you could technically use C++ and go deep dive, and I heard like the C++ support is pretty reasonable. It's not as like painful as it sounds.
Does it support Rust?
I think it would have like an extension. Actually, kind of funny thing about Godot in general is that Godot through GD extension can support Swift, Rust, C++, and C#.
Oh wow!
It does actually have built-in support for C#, but most people use something called GD script, which is like a Python-like language.
Oh man!
But
that's like
keeps
a
things
turn-off for me.
lightweight.
I don't want to use anything that's like Python.
That's what I initially felt. I don't disagree with that because it's not. Yeah, for example, it's not. There's no.
It's not my favorite style.
There's nothing. The language is not as expressive as any of the other languages or the general languages. So you do a lot of absurd if statements for no reason. If else statements for no reason. When a switch one would be just fine. No.
There's no switch statements. Oh, okay.
It's very vanilla, which will change over time. That's what I mean by like over time you can expect that to change and get a little bit better. But they have C#. Yeah,
C#. I've used a lot of C#, so I would. I don't know.
The reason why they don't recommend C# is there is some level of garbage collecting that still happens. It's the same with Unity, where there is a little bit of like a hang or like that periodically happens, and if you don't code correctly, which most game developers don't, you're liable to have like performance issues in certain areas, especially if you don't do things like object pooling or proper memory management or selective memory management, where you can like really optimize for that. And that takes a lot of discipline, and game developers don't have good discipline. It's just the way it is. So, but again, look forward to more updates on that regard. Hopefully I don't take forever, but right now I'm just kind of going through tutorials and just getting a sense of the experience with Godot. I don't know if you have any other particular questions or follow-ups on that.
Does
very
it feel lighter
lightweight.
Than
Holy
Unity?
cow, very lightweight.
Oh, that's cool. That might make me try it out then.
Let me rephrase that. For 2D, for sure. For 3D, it can hang a little bit when you start to run because everything is like a build and compile kind of thing. But it's not nearly as doesn't nearly take as long to get the assets up and running as Unity does. So Godot usually is fairly quick in terms of like turnaround, in terms of like workflows.
Look at their. I'm sorry, I'm just looking at their documentation. They have like an example.
That's what
in GD script versus C#, and I'm like, they wrote the C# one in the most verbose like looking way possible, so it takes up way more space. But whatever.
Yeah.
Because this is like the GD script looks pretty compact actually. Like it doesn't have a lot of cruft. It still has like are these colons? Is that how they do? Okay, so it's colons, but it doesn't have. You don't have to like. It doesn't have line terminators like C# does, which is annoying once you're used to not having that all the time. and
notice there,
braces,
right? Like,
which plus or minus on that one.
There are like you would think like, okay, if it gets into any of those, it should just quit, right? But it doesn't do that. So it's like scenarios like that where it's just, or like maybe it doesn't, maybe because like there's stuff underneath there, but like it does have return statements. So I guess it depends on how you
does it have return. It's not implicitly returned.
It is implicit, but like again, like that's still part of the process I need to figure out, or I need to better understand with GD script.
But it looks like it's pretty efficient to write the script you need for things. Like you're supposed to write little, aren't you in game programming, like mostly little scripts for the nodes to activate and when they get triggered, and
a lot of them are meant to be composable in a way so that I'm looking for. So that you don't have to write like long lines of code, or at least you shouldn't. If you do that, maybe you might consider doing that in a GD extension, with more like sophisticated code, like especially if you're doing something like data processing or network like some kind of
maybe even the AI for characters.
Yeah, even that.
Like an AI engine, or like
but you could build it. You can build it in Rust.
Rust. I've never used Rust. I just know like people constantly talking about Rust versus Go versus like Zig or something is a new one.
You could do it in Go if you wanted to.
System level language replacements. You know what no one ever talks about for system level languages is Swift. Wasn't that part of its debut? Wasn't that part of the point of one of the things they wanted Swift to be able to do was to operate any level? There's embedded Swift. You could do embedded Swift, but it's a super restricted environment. And then there's but no one does system programming Swift as far as I know. Does Apple even write system things in Swift? I don't know.
I mean, I'm always more inclined to be like, just pick the language that best fits the platform it best serves, right? Like part of the point of that language is to service that platform and take advantage of all. So
it's a shame. Goodness. I think Swift has come a long way, and I don't hate it now. I actually like it now. So I used to hate it, and it got better.
Steve's promotion of Swift. I don't hate it anymore.
Yeah, I don't hate it anymore. Like at least modern Swift. Like I've been since iOS 17. And 5.9 since Swift 5.9, I think.
So you can think of GD script in the same fashion. Like right now, you're probably going to hate it, but maybe over time, once there's already been some level of discourse of like trying to improve that to be a little more flexible of a language.
Well, I just want to make like a little spaceship. I want to make like an asteroids game or something like that level of complexity. That's all I need.
Not that hard to do, actually.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I want to do a little space game. I want like a space field going in the background. I want to like relive the 80s or the 70s.
You know what? That might. You know what, Steve? Just for you, I might do that as a prototype. Just to see
nice. Maybe instead of asteroids, it's little clowns because I hate clowns. I just shoot the clown faces.
Yeah, sure. Well, then what do they break up into? Like smaller
it's like
clowns?
You know what it could be? We could call it Killer Clowns from Outer Space Revenge or something. Remember that movie from like 80 something?
Sure.
And we're getting our revenge on the clowns that came to Earth and messed with us. Now we're going to space to get them. What?
Are you dating yourself?
Yeah, I saw that as a kid.
I know that one.
Oh no, I saw that movie. I think it was like probably on HBO or something when we had HBO as a kid. It was terrifying. Like literally, clowns come from outer space and eat people. Look it up. Yeah. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. It's a classic horror movie, and it terrified me as a child.
Be sure to add it in the notes.
I'm gonna put it in there.
All right. Well, we should probably wrap up. So let me do my little outro thing here. That is all we have for today. You can learn more about Philly Cocoa at phillycocoa.org. There you'll find links to our Slack group, meetup schedule, and contact info. If you're feeling generous, leave a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever your podcast platform of choice is, and share us with all your developer friends. And one more thing. More programmer dad jokes from the Reddit sphere.
Oh, nice.
What did the variable say to the compiler?
I don't know.
Keep me in your memories.
Keep me in your memories. Oh, right. God.
Next one. I had a telephone conversation with a pointer to a function. It said, it will call back.
Oh Oh my god! Will the kids today even get pointer jokes unless they've ever looked at C or something like that?
Our demographic is much older than them kids.
Yeah, that's
true. Why did Superman cash out on all his Bitcoin?
I don't know why.
Because he's allergic to cryptocurrency.
Oh, that's a stretch, but it kind of works. Cryptocurrency, nice.
Till next time. Good luck on your own developer journey. We will cheer for you always.
I think Swift has come a long way, and I don't hate it now. I actually like it now.
Steve's promotion of Swift. I don't hate it anymore.